Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, Iran is planning to transfer military hardware from Syria to Hezbollah, its proxy army in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu briefed his cabinet, saying at the same time that we are working to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear bombs, we are also trying to stop the shipment of lethal weapons from Syria to Lebanon. All of these armaments are directed against the State of Israel, and it's our right to prevent their manufacture or transfer. This comes just 1 week after the head of the Israeli Air Force delivered a clear message to Hezbollah by showing a delegation of visiting generals an image of an Israeli F-35 stealth fighter jet flying over the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
Hamas continues to terrorize Israel by firing anything it can get its hands on into Jewish communities. Residents in southern Israel were instructed to stay in their bomb shelters as the Gaza-based terror group rained rockets down on their towns. One mortar landed dangerously close to an Israeli kindergarten. Terrorists have flown more than 300 kite bombs and a weaponized drone into Israel over the past month. They've also planted several improvised explosive devices in an attempt to harm soldiers patrolling the Gaza border. Fires started by Arab arsonists continue to rage across southern Israel. Thousands of acres of trees, crops, and forested areas have been set ablaze by flaming Molotov kite bombs launched from Gaza. The damage is estimated to be in the tens of millions of shekels. A group of Israeli farmers announced that they are filing suit against Hamas leaders for their crimes. Yochanan has more on that story.
That's right, Erin. Several Israeli farmers whose lands have been consumed by fires started by terrorists in Gaza are suing Hamas leaders in the International Criminal Court. Attorney Nitzana Darshan-Leitner from the Shurat Hadin, the Israel Law Center, announced they intend to file a claim against Ismail Haniyeh and Yehiyeh Sinwar at the ICC for their role in the destruction of thousands of acres of fields in southern Israel. Darshan-Leitner said Hamas leaders are guilty of crimes under the Rome Statute, the treaty that established the International Criminal Court, including agricultural terrorism, using children in combat, and using the Gaza Strip's civilian population as human shields. She urged the International Criminal Court at The Hague to exact justice upon the Hamas terror group.
Turkey is attempting to sway Jerusalem Arabs toward its radical ideology by giving them money. Ankara and Jerusalem are in the midst of a serious diplomatic spat, and Turkey is reportedly escalating the dispute by inciting Jerusalem's Arab population and giving them cash incentives. According to a report in the Israel Hayom, the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, or TICA, has shelled out about $420,000 to Arab residents and store owners in the Holy City. Ankara has been a longtime supporter of the Hamas terror group, which is waging a violent war with the Jewish state and is committed to its destruction. Now Turkey is attempting to spread this poisonous ideology throughout the Israeli capital with a payout and a Turkish flag. An Israeli organization that has been monitoring TICA's activities said that the organization is promoting extremist views by pouring millions into interference and undercutting Israel's sovereignty in Jerusalem.
Israel has begun construction of an underwater barricade that is intended to protect the Jewish state from seaborne terrorist threats emanating out of Gaza. Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman released a statement saying, "Today we began the construction of a one-of-a-kind barrier which will prevent the possibility of infiltration from Gaza into Israel by way of the Mediterranean Sea." Lieberman said the wall demonstrates that Israel will continue to protect its citizens with might and sophistication. The plan to construct the obstacle was initiated in 2014 after 5 Hamas terrorists armed with automatic weapons and grenades swam into Israel from Gaza.
Israeli Defense Forces will integrate the use of weaponized unmanned vehicles on its borders. The IDF robotics unit announced that the Draconid robot, created by the Israeli defense company Elbit Systems, has successfully fired on a series of test targets. Draconid is reportedly able to identify threats and shoot accurately from a range of 1.5 kilometers. Major Slava Resnik, who commands the unit, said there are no solutions like this anywhere in the world in terms of controlling remote firing. He said the Army is planning to incorporate the new solution into the IDF military operations in various theaters. Major Resnick explained that Israeli soldiers are vulnerable to firing from ambushes or roadside charges while they're carrying out routine security operations, and that the ultimate goal is to replace soldiers with robots so that if there is damage, it would be inflicted on metal and not to one of our soldiers. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas is blaming his recent hospitalization on U.S. President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Despite being a heavy smoker, overweight, and suffering from heart and prostate conditions, the 83-year-old PA boss insists that America is to blame for his poor health. Abbas was initially hospitalized 9 days after suffering from complications after ear surgery and was later diagnosed with pneumonia.
2 NATO ships docked at the port of Haifa ahead of joint operations with the Israeli Navy. Senior officers with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization met with their Israeli counterparts as the naval maneuvers got underway. An official with the Israeli Defense Forces said the exercise underscores NATO's commitment to the strategic relationship with the Israeli Navy and to maintaining stability in the region. Royal Navy Commander James Morley, the head of the NATO Standing Maritime Group, echoed this sentiment, saying there is no better way to understand the region than by exercising with the Israeli Navy. Israel has a successful partnership with NATO and has been a member of its Mediterranean dialogue since the group was founded in 1994.
Anti-Semitic caricatures have been appearing in Arabic media much more frequently since the United States recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The Anti-Defamation League reported that Arabic language media has become a hotbed of anti-Semitic rhetoric and has sharply increased its use of cartoons which depict Jewish influence over U.S. and international politics. The ADL stated that the cartoons invoke anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jewish control of American foreign policy and that they include dehumanizing depictions of Israel as a beastly animal. These disgusting anti-Israel images are also rampant in the Palestinian media. In fact, PA leader Mahmoud Abbas was recently pictured holding a newspaper with the image of an Israeli soldier stealing an Arab baby's bottle and then force-feeding it poison instead.
The Jewish state is mourning the tragic death of a young soldier who was murdered by Palestinian terrorists. Staff Sergeant Ronen Lubarsky was part of an elite unit tracking a terrorist cell that had carried out several recent shooting attacks on Israeli civilians. During the mission, Arab assailants dropped a marble slab on Lubarsky from the top of a 3-story building. He was rushed to a Jerusalem hospital where he succumbed to his wounds. Hundreds of people attended the funeral for the 20-year-old soldier. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that he is closely monitoring the manhunt for the terrorist responsible for Lubarsky's death, and he vowed that they would be brought to justice.
The Hamas terror group has confessed to deceiving the world about the true nature of its protests in Gaza. One of the terror group's leaders, Mahmoud al-Zahar, told Al Jazeera that Hamas is not staging peaceful protests, but rather a violent resistance bolstered by a military force and security agencies, and that he believes the armed struggle against Israel is growing and developing. Al-Zahar pointed out that when the Palestinians talk about peaceful resistance, they are intentionally deceiving the public, and he said that the terror group's clear deception has resulted in tremendous support for Hamas.
Israel has called on the European Union to cease funding the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement. Gilad Erdan, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, has penned a letter to EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini asking her to end the hypocrisy and stop financial contributions to organizations that boycott Israel. Erdan stressed that the fact that the European Union provides funds to groups that support a boycott of Israel and call for the arrest of IDF officers discriminates against the Jewish state, harms ties between Europe and Israel, and encourages the continuation of the conflict with the Palestinians. The Israeli Strategic Affairs Ministry released a report stating that EU nations give $5.9 million to organizations that support BDS despite claims to the contrary.
Thousands of people from all over the world have participated in a program to inscribe Israeli flags with messages of love for Israel's 70th birthday. More than 200,000 people participated in the Ascend to the Flag project that allowed them to sign the banners and write messages for Israel's next generation. The decorated flags carry messages of hope and love for the Jewish state in a myriad of languages. They're currently on display in the Israeli capital, but soon they're going to be placed in a time capsule and buried on Jerusalem's Ammunition Hill to be opened on Israel's 100th birthday in the year 2048. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful sunny day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Pastor Larry Huck. He's the senior pastor at New Beginnings Church in Dallas. Pastor Huck, thanks for being on the show. Tell our viewers a little about what you're doing here in the land.
Well, this is my 32nd trip to Israel, and we always come over looking for a project that we can partner with the Jewish people and the land of Israel. And one of the things we're doing right now is working with the Israeli government on the project of Aliyah, of helping Jewish people from all over the world fulfill Bible prophecy and return exactly the way God says it to the land of Israel.
You know, you have incredible ability to access the top leaders of Israel. You've met our Prime Minister a couple times just this year. You work with the heads of different ministries and different organizations at the highest level. How do you believe that you have such access to these people?
Well, I think it's a couple things. One is that it's really I wake up every day and my goal is, God, how do I serve you, and how can I be a blessing to the Jewish people and the land of Israel? How can I speak to the world through our television program on how important it is for every one of us to stand with Israel and to stand with the Jewish people around the world? And the thing we get all the time is people say, we can tell it's not just words with you, that it's a passion with you. It's in your heart. And I think that's the reason why leaders in Israel let their guard down and embrace us and are so kind to us.
You're clearly one of the most recognizable pastors here in Jerusalem. People know you, people come up to you in the streets and talk to you. Do you feel a weight in the fact that you're basically representing millions of Christians behind you who love and support Israel, or do you see that as a blessing?
Oh, I see it as a tremendous blessing. I mean, we were eating breakfast the other morning, and the waiter says, I watch you all the time on television. Here in Jerusalem, in Israel, I've met the Prime Minister twice, and both times that I've met him, he said, I watch you on television. Thank you for what you do for the land of Israel. And to me, it's just the greatest honor and the greatest blessing that God could give me is to put in my heart an unconditional love for the land of Israel and the Jewish people, not only in Israel but around the world. It's a blessing beyond words.
You also put acts to faith. You sit on the board of the Israel Allies Foundation, the organization that runs faith-based diplomacy for the state of Israel. You're the only pastor who sits on the board of directors there. Why is that an important thing for you?
Well, we believe that faith or religion and action have to go hand in hand. And so many people say, well, we're just Christians, or we're just a religious organization. We have nothing to do with politics. If we don't get involved with politics as Jews and as Christians, then those who don't love Israel and those who don't love God, they're going to end up making the laws. And so it's tremendously important, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm very outwardly bold about it, is that we as Jews and Christians need to use our faith to make a difference in the governments of our country.
You mentioned Aliyah and how you're so supportive of Aliyah. With the rise of radical Islam and anti-Semitism around the world, people say Aliyah is the most important thing at this time. Why did you take the step of actually getting involved in supporting Aliyah?
Well, one is, the main reason is to be a blessing to the Jewish people, but biblically, the prophet Isaiah gives us a mandate that right before the Messiah comes, that God will use Gentiles to lift up Jewish people from around the world and bring them back to the land of Israel. And so one of the great things that God has blessed us with being a part of is to speak to people not only in Dallas and in the United States, but we literally have partners from Australia to England to Central and South America and throughout Europe and everywhere in the world, in Asian countries, that say, Pastor Larry, we want to partner with you to be a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And you know, one of the things that I absolutely love is at Yad Vashem here in Jerusalem, the Holocaust Museum, there's a monument that I've got actually on my wall in Dallas at our church that has changed my life. And it says this, it says, when you save one life, God sees it as if you've saved the whole world. And what a blessing, what a tremendous honor and privilege that God would use us. You know, I don't mean to be political on this, but it was Gentiles who pushed the Jews out of Israel and Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, and now it's God is using, partnering Jews and Gentiles together to bring Jews back. We're going full circle in prophecy.
You make a very important point to not just pray for Israel and support Israel, but actually to come to Israel, and you bring groups to Israel.
Absolutely.
Why is that important?
Well, you know, the rabbis say that you'll never fully understand God's word until you stand in the land in which it was written. But when you bring people to, I think most people don't even understand what Israel is and how the Jewish people live, that this is one of the most blessed and prosperous countries in the entire world. And when we bring people, you know, I say this all the time, there's no country in the world like Israel, and there's no city in any country like Jerusalem. And I've, you know, this is my 32nd time being here, and when I bring people, especially people who've never been here before, I love to bring them into Jerusalem on Friday afternoon, when all of Jerusalem, all of Israel, but especially Jerusalem, is preparing for Shabbat. And I love to see the looks on their faces and the tears in their eyes when they begin to realize this is not just a historical city. This is the most spiritual place on the planet. And God's allowing me to Aliyah to come up into Jerusalem as we're preparing for the Sabbath. It's an amazing journey.
Pastor Larry, there are literally tens of millions of people watching the show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Well, it's end time prophecy that it's not just, I had you and some other Jewish friends of mine saying it's vital that the world sees not just Christians standing for Israel or Jewish people standing with Israel, but it's vital to see Jews and Gentiles together standing for Israel and standing for our countries and standing for the Bible and the kingdom of God. And so we've decided, along with the Israeli Ally Foundation, which is the political part, we've decided to start what we call the One New Man Army. Jews and Gentiles being seen around the world, standing together, that one new man that the Apostle Paul talks about in the book of Ephesians. And so we want to ask you to not only pray for us, but be a part of it. Let us have you join the army of the one new man. Can you imagine, first time in history, Jews and Gentiles standing together for the land of Israel and the people of Israel?
Thank you, Pastor Larry, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
and welcome to the Return to Zion with Keren HaYesod. I'm Eliezer Moody Sandberg, World Chairman of Keren HaYesod, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. It was foretold that the children of Israel would return to their land on the wings of eagles. This is why it was so important for Keren HaYesod to support the establishment of Israel's first airline. I hope you enjoy. God bless you from Jerusalem.
The divine promise of bringing the children of Israel to their land was given to Moses at the foot of Mount Sinai. I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, as it is written in the book of Exodus, is a prophecy that has sparked the immigration for 3,000 years. And with the establishment of the Zionist movement and the State of Israel, it has begun to be fulfilled. Eagles made of steel of El Al Airlines have taken to the skies of the Holy Land, carrying with them hundreds of thousands of new immigrants to Israel. They have come from Yemen and Iraq, from North Africa and Ethiopia, from Russia and Ukraine. El Al, Israel's flagship carrier, was established with the support of the donors of Keren HaYesod, a global organization authorized by the Israeli government to raise funds for Israel's most important priority projects. Most urgent is the task of bringing Jews to Israel from countries of distress where they face danger. Just after Israel's establishment, nearly 50,000 Jews were brought to Israel from the ancient Yemenite Jewish community. In 1951 and 1952, more than 130,000 Jews from Iraq were brought home to safety in Israel. El Al Airlines was a key player in these airlifts and in waves of immigration since. Perhaps no one better epitomizes Israel's immigration story than Aryeh Oz. He was accepted into the pilot school of the Israel Air Force and earned his pilot's wings in 1956, and after completing his military service, joined El Al Airlines. He returned to the Air Force in 1991 to fly a jumbo jet taking Ethiopian Jews home to Israel in Operation Solomon.
We were about to evacuate 14,500 Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa to Tel Aviv. I flew a 747. We had 760 seats, and I sat on the floor between the seats. We had 1,087 souls on board. I said it's our obligation as the Jewish people to bring everybody to Israel. I felt so happy, that I took part in an operation like this. When we descended and came over Jerusalem, there was not one person in the cockpit who had no tears in his eyes.
For nearly 100 years, Keren HaYesod's vision has turned the dream of the return of the Jewish people to Israel into reality and remains at the center of efforts to sustain and develop a flourishing Jewish homeland in fulfillment of biblical prophecy.
Every time that when I made my walk around in order to see that the aircraft is serviceable, I always looked up and saw the Star of David and said to myself, gee, I'm flying El Al. This is El Al. This is Israel. This is the Jewish people.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Last week, following large-scale attempts by Hamas-driven demonstrators to break through Israel's fence in Gaza, to penetrate Israel, to kill Israelis, to try to destroy the Jewish state, the international media overwhelmingly took the side of Hamas and the Palestinians. I interviewed many times in the international media, and never once, not once, did I hear the word Hamas. Instead, I heard how Israeli soldiers wantonly and willfully shot at Palestinian children, innocent demonstrators who were only protesting for the right to eat into a different life. Nobody bothered to look at the facts. Nobody bothered to ask who drove these people toward the fence, and nobody bothered to ask whether Israel has the unassailable right to defend its borders and defend its citizens from massacre. What is going on here? Is it only the drive for ratings because dead Palestinian children make a bigger headline than Israelis defending their homeland? Is that part of it? Is it because Israel is not doing an efficient job in explaining itself while the Palestinians invest very, very heavily in their side of the story, in their PR? Yes, it's all of those things. But at base, it's something much, much darker. What I saw repeatedly in my interviews with the international community was nothing less than a blood libel. Yes, blood was spilt, but it was spilt in self-defense and in saving lives. It was not blood of innocent people. Yet that's the way it was portrayed in the international press. A massacre of the innocents, as you will. And if that sounds familiar to you, it sounds familiar to me too. It is that dark force of anti-Semitism, assuming that Jews have no right to defend themselves, that Jews kill innocent people, that we revel in massacring. Those are very dark forces. And only a few hours' drive north of Gaza, hundreds if not thousands of Palestinians were killed by Assad's forces when they entered the Palestinian refugee camp of Yarmouk outside of Damascus. The international press never covered it. They only care when Jews have to kill Palestinians in order to defend other Jews. When Arabs kill Arabs, nobody cares.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let us bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.